budget to the Board of Education at our meeting on January 29. And usually at this place in the process, we take the time to hold a public hearing, and then following the hearing, give the board an opportunity to participate in a work session on the budget. And so the way we have handled these, and we'll do so tonight, is that our Chief Financial Officer, Mr. Burke, will very quickly present sort of the summary slides of the superintendent's proposed budget. As soon as he's finished, we'll begin the public hearing. We'll call the speakers forward who have signed up in advance. We'll kind of go over those details when we get to that point about where to go and how much time and that sort of thing. And then as soon as the final speaker has an opportunity, we'll immediately move into the budget work session. So, Mr. Burke.
Okay, good evening, board members, superintendent. I'm gonna make sure I can click here. Here we go. So I'm going to highlight a few slides. This is basically pulling from the presentation from last week with the proposed budget. Just going to touch on a few key slides. You'll recall we did a review of previous budget reductions that happened following the Great Recession, and through about a decade of cuts there. You'll recall we highlighted previous position reductions, so these were FTE that were eliminated over multiple years within the budget. Program reductions highlighted there. I'm not going to go through each. Mr. O'Neill walked you through these at last week's meeting. Just wanted to kind of put it out there for the highlight and to have it in the presentation. You'll recall quite a few reductions and efficiency measures taken throughout the system. Okay, so again, those will be there for people to refer to and look back to January 29th for additional detail on those reductions over time if you're interested. Wanted to highlight before we begin the hearing tonight, again, a snapshot of our fiscal year 26 proposed operating budget. You'll recall after the governor's budget and we got some revised numbers with fairly flat enrollment. We see state revenue in our foundation, our most flexible revenue that we have for operations at $2.1 million. And where we stand right now with the county's budget revenue request of the county, the $7.2 million, that's the amount identified in the county commissioner's operating plan for fiscal year 26. And we've honored our commitment at this point right here at $7.2 million. So looking at about $9.3 million in increase in our non-restricted operating. As we looked to put the budget together with the superintendent, we identified primarily inflationary related increases throughout the system, but specifically through utilities and insurances and benefits to the total expenditure increase of about $12.9 million. So a structural imbalance in our budget as we look to finalize a balanced budget. See there, the revenues don't cover the expenditures, about $3.6 million. So in order to work toward a balanced budget, in the proposed budget, the superintendent has proposed these reductions throughout the entire budget, looking for opportunities to bring the budget back into balance of $3.6 million. Walk through those briefly. A phase-in of the increase in utilities by using fund balance available. I'm not going to highlight that all tonight, but you'll recall that we're about average on our fund balance at this point with a healthy fund balance, so an opportunity to balance that item. And the 1-to-1 technology ratio for grades 3 to 5 in this fiscal year 26 budget, about $1 million. The outdoor school program, about $1.1 million annually. And then some of the smaller items in dollars there. The transportation reimbursement formula, so reducing the increase made available for the transportation formula from a 5% amount to a 3% amount. And then some central office reductions as well. So at this point, $3.6 million would bring us back into balance. And obviously, we can have additional discussion about what other, what would need to be done to keep us in balance if we make other choices at this point. You'll recall we identified a few items not included in the fiscal year 26 operating budget at this point. So at this point, no identified budget resources for employee compensation enhancement across the system. We do have 3 closed agreements, negotiation agreements with 3 units. That totals about $3 million in general operating. And so in order to work through this budget as proposed, we would need to reopen negotiations. There are other programmatic and school-based needs, that have been identified for many years. This does not, they don't fall into this budget, really no enhancements to programs and no additional staffing identified through our operating budget. Good. Yep. With that, I'll turn it back to Mr. O'Neill for the public hearing.
Okay, so with that bit of background reviewed and established, we'll move into the public hearing portion. We will call one at a time speakers, members of the public who signed up to speak. And when your name is called, please come to this podium in the center of the room. And as you begin speaking, I think Ms. Bowers will, she's already displayed the clock on the screen, and each speaker will have 3 minutes. If you get to a place where the time expires, we would just ask you to wrap up that final sentence where you are, and then we'll call the next speaker. So the first speaker tonight will be Shannon Marble.
Are you ready for me? Okay.
Whenever you're ready.
Okay, thanks. Good evening, members of the board. My name is Shannon Isaacs Marble. I'm here today to speak with you on behalf of the children and educators of Carroll County, particularly regarding the proposed budget cuts that threaten essential programs and resources in our schools. I understand the difficult choices you face in balancing the budget, but I urge you to consider the long-term impacts these cuts will have on our students and in our community. One of the most pressing concerns in the potential cuts is to the STEM programs. These programs are not just electives. They are vital to ensuring that every child has tools to succeed in today's rapidly changing world. STEM initiatives, especially outdoor school, offer life-changing opportunities for our students. Without these irreplaceable programs, our students, particularly those from low-income and underrepresented communities, will be denied opportunities that could shape their futures. As a parent of 3 children in this district, I've seen firsthand the power of these programs. My oldest child attended outdoor school, and it was one of the most formative educational experiences he had. The lessons he took from that trip have shaped his curiosity, confidence, and understanding of the world. Unfortunately, my middle child, who would have the opportunity to attend outdoor school next year, will miss out if these cuts go through. That is devastating, not just for him, but for all the students who will lose those opportunities. At the same time, we can't overlook the ongoing impact of the pandemic. Many students are still recovering from the learning loss they experienced, particularly those who missed out on the critical supports. These are the very children who stand to lose most if we cut resources like instructional materials, educational supports, and highly qualified staff. My middle child, like many others, has already missed out on so much due to virtual learning and the disruptions caused by the pandemic. Their education has been significantly impacted, and we've already faced challenges in recovering from lost time. Cutting resources like outdoor school, instructional materials, and support staff can only widen those gaps. Removing supports will make it harder for teachers to meet the diverse needs of their students, and I fear the consequences will be felt long-term, both academic achievement and in the emotional and social development of our children. Moreover, increasing class sizes and cutting staff will make it even harder for our educators to provide the support and attention each child needs. Teachers are already under difficult work conditions, and we can't expect them to meet the growing needs of our diverse student populations without adequate support. We have a local treasure in outdoor school. It's an invaluable experience that not only enhances students' education, but also shapes their character and their connection to the world. The lessons learned at outdoor school cannot be replicated in the classroom and should not be sacrificed for short-term savings. We've heard time and time again about the lasting impact these experiences have had on students. Why would we want to take away from our future generations of students, especially when so many have already lost so much in the last few years? In closing, I implore you to reevaluate the real-life consequences of these proposed cuts. The decision to reduce resources, whether it's cutting STEM programs, instructional materials, or support staff, does not align with the goals we've set to ensure every child in Carroll County receives a high-quality education. For my children and for every child in this district, these programs are not just nice to have, they're essential. We can do better for our students. They deserve better. Let's not take away the opportunities the community they need to succeed, especially when we have so much potential right in our community to create meaningful change. Thank you very much for your time, and happy School Counselors Week.
Ms. Bergman is our next speaker, and again, we would just ask when the time expires if you could conclude on the sentence where you are. And if you would like to submit your comments in a written format, we'll accept those as well and provide them to the board.
Greetings, members of the board. My name is Diana Bergman, and I'm a parent. I know it's tough times, but tougher times are coming ahead of us. And it's going to impact every single student and family here in Carroll County. When I think about the cuts that are looking in the next few months that are coming, that are federally funded programs. We're talking about the food and nutritional programs, our lunch services, our breakfast services provide for kids. According to Google, when I asked the question, all elementary schools in Carroll County and middle schools are identified as Title I schools, meaning they're utilizing a certain percentage of federal funds. If that's gone, we will all pay the price. Those lunches are not going to be at the price where we're currently paying for them, for those of us that could pay for it, and for those that are qualified for free and reduced lunch will not have. And we have hungry students, they're not learning. We know this. That's why we have programs like that available. When we're looking in the future for our capital improvement projects, guess what? The cost of materials starts to go up. We won't be able to afford it, and those projects will get pushed back. Like roof replacement, maintenance of boilers, cooling system, a lot of things that make up the buildings of the schoolhouse where we send our children to. And finally, our families that live in Carroll County, that are federal workers, that rely on income, come tomorrow, are going to be facing some tough choices. You know, the Army, my husband, 21 years in the Army, just recently retired. We don't do the work that we do. We don't get the support we do as military families unless we have our federal workers walking us through the process, getting us qualified for our benefits, and helping and supporting children that are military affiliated. And civilian DOD workers that are also military children that reside here in Carroll County. So you have big decisions to make, but we have to stand together and do the right thing, because everyone all together will pay the price of these challenges ahead of us. I personally think that it was the cuts that were made, the sacrifices that were being looked at this budget were underestimated. I think it's going to be a lot more on how we're all going to be impacted as a nation, not just here in Carroll County. Best of luck.
Thank you. Does Kelly Gatsky wish to speak? No. Okay, we'll move to Julie Walsh.
Hello, good evening. My name is Julie Walsh. I am a mother of 5 children in 4 different Carroll County public schools. They're in grades 1st, 3rd, 5th, 7th, and 9th. And I am the PTO president for both Pars Ridge Elementary and Mount Airy Elementary in Mount Airy. I contacted our parent school community and invited their responses, so tonight I'm bringing some of them to you as well as my own. So we recognize the difficult position you all are in, but one of the proposed cuts in the budget seems to us to go against a core responsibility of the school system, and another hits squarely on one of the most important and most timely struggles our children face today. So first, our parents were very concerned about the potential elimination of a cost of living increase for our teachers. Over and over again, I'm hearing teachers are the most fundamental element of our schools, the importance of keeping our word to them, that educators are the foundation of our children's success, and they deserve to be compensated fairly for their hard work and dedication. There's a great concern that teachers are under a lot of stress and that this will only contribute to it further. Second, and honestly, the thing that I heard most from parents was a great concern with the elimination of outdoor school. I mean, you all know it has been a rite of passage for generations of Carroll County students. I heard from many parents who grew up in the county and who still remember the impact that it had on their lives and who still talk about it. I did not grow up here, but honestly, knowing people who had outdoor school is one of the things that attracted to me to Carroll County Public Schools, and it is one of the things I thought about when I bought my home. More than anything, though, we believe our children need this experience today more than they ever needed it in the 70s or 80s or 90s because of the ever-present influence of technology in their lives. This is an opportunity for our kids to get the cell phones out of their hands, to get out of the screens, to take a break from their highly scheduled lives, and to learn about what it is to be a kid, to learn about how to work together, how to solve problems, how to be resilient. And these are just not lessons that are easily replicated in the classroom. Parents are encouraging you all to find creative solutions to finding funding for the program, and they also expressed a willingness to pay fees to help support it if possible, and to help raise money for scholarship programs for kids who cannot afford the fees. So we urge you to be flexible and creative, and we thank you for the time to speak tonight.
Karen Sparks.
Hello, good evening, esteemed members of the school board, faculty, parents, and community members. My name is Karen Sparks. I'm the COO of a tech hardware company in Owings Mills, and while it's not my main point, I believe there is work in the technology side of the budget that we could possibly even help with. But thank you for taking the time to listen today. I stand before you as a passionate advocate for outdoor school, a program that has an immeasurable impact on the lives of our students. We know that due to current budget cuts, difficult decisions are being made, and unfortunately, some programs are at risk of being eliminated. But I ask you to consider the broader implications of this decision. First and foremost, outdoor school is not just a class or extracurricular activity. It is an opportunity for students to engage with their passions, develop essential life skills, and prepare for the future. Something that hasn't been said yet this evening is this is something that once you cut, it doesn't come back. Cutting this program does not just affect the budget. It affects the students, their families, and ultimately the future of our community. My son attended outdoor school this fall. I have no other kids going through the program, but it's that important to us. We had 2 concerns when he was going to outdoor school. One was he is neurodivergent with ADHD, and he did not want to take his medication. He wanted to be quote unquote normal. ADHD medication impacts your ability to eat, your moods, things that he was hoping to not experience. His second concern is that he's a mama's boy and wanted to know if any other mama's boys would be there. Well, I had no reason to be worried. I picked him up on Friday and he cried. He cried that he couldn't go back. The mama's boy who left Monday morning returned wanting to go live at outdoor school and only come home on holidays, not even weekends. He slept well, ate well, played, learned, grew socially and emotionally As a little human, so much in that short 5 days. As a side note, he's coming back this summer to their summer camp, and we're spending $600 to do that. The lesson learned here is we must also recognize that education is not just about standardized tests and core subjects. It's about shaping well-rounded individuals who can adapt, innovate, and succeed in the world beyond school. Programs like Outdoor School teach critical life skills that are not always measured in the classroom, but are vital to their success. While budget cuts are necessary, they should not come at the cost of our students' holistic development. Investing in our children today is investing in our future. We moved to Carroll County primarily for this reason. I urge you to explore alternative solutions before cutting this invaluable program, whether it be finding external funding, partnering with local businesses, or restructuring the budget in a way that preserves programs like this. I believe there are more creative ways. When submitting our paperwork for Outdoor School, we were asked for a check for $70 with the option to send more to support others. We sent more. It's worth more. In closing, I ask for your support in keeping Outdoor School alive, not just the students today, but for the generations that follow. As I mentioned before, this is a program that once you cut, the expenses are even higher to bring it back, and we will never see it again. Thank you.
The next speaker is Catherine Height.
Hello, Board of Education. My name is Kathy Height. I'm a 9th grader at Westminster High School, and I have recently received the news that Outdoor School is up for cancellation due to the budget plan. I wanted to express my deep concern for this subject. I'm a member of Scouts BSA Troop 393 in Westminster, Maryland, and we go on outdoor adventures every month, so I'm used to nature and being outdoors. Although I had been to overnight campouts and activities before, Outdoor School was one of the best experiences I've ever had. It sparked my love for nature and for space, which I am still a huge fan of. Because of Outdoor School, I want to become an environmental activist when I grow up. I'm also not only speaking for myself, but the vast majority of my peers in high school and in middle school who also had an amazing experience there. Along with the amazing experience, Outdoor School also helps high school students like me with not enough service hours graduate. Especially for students who may have just moved to Maryland, they can get almost all the service hours they need to graduate when they volunteer. Outdoor School is also so much more important than you realize. Many families don't have the opportunity to camp or to go on outdoor adventures, and Outdoor School opens their eyes to the world around them for a minimal cost. There are kids paying hundreds and sometimes thousands of dollars just to go to a summer camp for 1 week, when Carroll County can provide it right here for way less than that. This is such an amazing opportunity that we have, and it would be cruel to take that away from kids who deserve it. Outdoor School has been around since 1976. For so many years, it has impacted students who have been here, and future generations deserve to attend it. Other students and I are begging to not have it be taken away. We hope that you make the right decision and keep Outdoor School alive. On behalf of us and future students to come, thank you.
Karen Donaldson.
Hi. Thank you for taking the time to listen to the invaluable input that the taxpayers and citizens of Carroll County have, which I'm a member. I'm also a parent and a grandparent. I had children go through the outdoor camp, and I had one grandchild so far go through the outdoor camp. I'm here to beg you to reconsider cutting the Outdoor School. I'm sure you're aware, as other people have said, this program has been around for 48 years. And the enrichment that it has provided sixth graders is truly priceless. The program is easy to put on the chopping block because there's no art teachers whining that all students need art to be well-rounded, or gym teachers saying that our youngsters are overweight and need more exercise. So I'm here to say that I have no doubt that 99% of the sixth graders at the end of sixth grade would say that going to the Outdoor School was the highlight of sixth grade for them, if not middle school. And I say that because my granddaughter told me that last night. She said she was sure that there was nowhere else that she could have learned to think independently and learn about nature the way that she did in outdoor school. That's just impossible to do in a classroom environment. But I get it. I'm self-employed. I have a budget. I have to budget my money. And I'm sure the superintendent, the school board, you've got a budget. But there's fat in my budget, and there has to be fat someplace in your budget. I asked for a list of salaries from the Freedom of Information Act, and I didn't receive it yet. So I did print out this annual report, and I'm just reading it from the annual report. There is, if you include the whole staff, there's a staff member for every 7.3 students. And I understand that's kind of generic and vague, so then there is a better breakdown here. There's 393 administrators and professionals. That's almost 400 human beings. There's another 427 instructional assistants and paraprofessionals, which I have no clue what that means. That comes to 800 people. And I seriously wonder if they're all really kicking butt all day long. I mean, there has to be fat, and cutting fat is never fun. But if you could get rid of some of these people by retirement, I'm old. I can't afford to retire yet, but I'm sure they have a retirement. I don't have a retirement because I'm self-employed. These are people that are not teaching our kids at all. And then you could keep the outdoor school. You know, the only difference would be if you want to take the easy way out, and there aren't people ready to retire, if all 800 employees would take a pay cut of $1,500, then there's $1.2 million for the outdoor school. So there are ways that we can keep our sixth graders so that they can be taught the skills that they can't learn anyplace else, and they will learn and use their entire lives. Please don't take the easy way out and kill what makes Carroll County schools great.
Thank you. The next speaker is Aaron Miller.
Good evening, members of the board. My name is Aaron Miller. I'm a parent of 2 children that currently attend Runnymede Elementary. I stand before you today to speak on behalf of the outdoor school program that has made such a positive impact on our students, and to urge that you do not put an end to this invaluable initiative. Outdoor education is not just about teaching kids how to hike, camp, or appreciate nature. It's about fostering essential life skills, building resilience, and connecting students to the world beyond their classrooms. It's about making learning come alive. Studies have shown that outdoor programs improve students' physical and mental health. A study by the University of Illinois found that students involved in outdoor learning had higher test scores in science and mathematics. Outdoor activities can also help improve reading comprehension because it provides real-world experiences to connect to literary themes. A study by the University of Minnesota found that outdoor programs help reduce stress and anxiety, allowing students to feel more emotionally balanced and connected to others. And a study from the University of Utah showed children who spend more time outdoors are focused, less distracted, and less prone to behavioral issues. Nature-based activities foster creativity and reduce the risk of negative mental health outcomes tied to excessive screen time. Outdoor education provides a hands-on experience where students can learn about the environment, science, and sustainability in ways that no textbook can replicate. And most importantly, it helps build confidence, leadership skills, and a sense of responsibility. When we take our middle schoolers outside, we offer them a space to explore, challenge themselves, and discover new things about the world and about themselves. This is especially important in today's world, where kids are increasingly disconnected from nature, and technology often takes precedent over real-world experiences. Closing this program would mean depriving students of these opportunities that are critical in their development as individuals and as members of the community. The benefits of outdoor education cannot be measured solely in academic terms. It's about creating well-rounded individuals who are equipped to handle the challenges of life. The memories they make, the lessons they learn, and the skills they gain will stay with them far beyond middle school. I understand there may be concerns about costs or logistics, But these challenges can be addressed through collaboration, creative solutions, and a collective commitment to supporting our students. This program is an investment in their future. I ask you today to think not only about the short term, but also the long-term impact we're making on our young learners. Let's not take away the chance for them to engage with the outdoors, to learn in dynamic environments, and to grow as confident, capable individuals. And there has to be a better way to save $1 million. Thank you.
Ms. Cindy Porter? Cindy?
I didn't get any notifications, so I didn't think I was going to speak. Good evening. My name is Cindy Porter. I am the president of CASE, representing assistants and clericals in Carroll County Public Schools. I just wanted to mention, while no one in this county wants outdoor school to go, we are facing some extreme budgetary issues and times, and these times call for extreme measures, unfortunately. And according to the superintendent's presented proposals, and the timeline and what we have dealt with in our county. I have been around, as I said, this is my 26th year. And I was around for the years when we went 7 years without any raises. And I have continued because of my passion and love for students. I just want everyone to know that there are 3 support staff unions in this county: food service, CASE that I represent, and also our custodial union represented by AFSCME, whose contracts were negotiated 2.5 years ago and won't be able to be fulfilled. And as a 26-year professional who has tried to hone my craft because of my support and love and passion for the students I work with, I think it's important for the public to understand that I am at the top of my scale currently, and I am living as a single person on $39,000 a year. And so please consider other people who weren't included in the blueprint. We weren't included in the blueprint for anything other than a qualification for our pre-K assistants. And while we don't want to make cuts, realize how your support staff supports the students and the needs currently in our schools with behaviors and academics, especially after the pandemic and what we are dealing with currently. Thank you.
The next speaker is Ronnie Rebin.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for allowing me this opportunity. My name is Ronnie Redman. I'm a 24-year physical education teacher at Hampstead Elementary School and a first-year evening teacher at Outdoor School. I'm coming to talk about a unique experience I've had as a alumni of Carroll County Public Schools growing up as a student and as a parent and a teacher of Outdoor School. In 1981, in 6th grade at West Middle School, I was given the opportunity to go to Outdoor School for the first time. And it was the first time that I stayed away from home in an environment where I didn't know what to expect. And to this day, I still have the memories, the visual memories, vivid memories of Principal Steve Haycock standing there in the cabins talking to us about how to better the environment. As I walk through the communities today and I wear Outdoor School hat, I run into people all the time and say, "Oh, Outdoor School, I went there. It was the best experience ever." Their face lights up. A few years back, my daughter, she has cerebral palsy. She is in the life skills program in Carroll County. She was at Shiloh Middle School, and a permission slip came home to go to Outdoor School. I thought, wow, I don't know how this is going to happen. It was a great experience for me, but how is this going to work for her with physical and cognitive challenges? The staff at Outdoor School and Shiloh assured me that she would do well, that she would flourish. And as I dropped her off to spend the night, I believe it was 1 or 2 nights, it was the best experience for her. She came home exhausted and tired, but I couldn't have denied her the opportunity, and I was so happy to see the success that she had. Then fast forward to now as a first-year teacher at Outdoor School. I always wanted to have that opportunity to experience the same things that I had as a student. And as I go there, I'm still amazed and still learning what the teachers are teaching the students. I was given the opportunity to teach about the raptors and the owls. And as I teach physical education, one of my units is to take the students around and learn about habitats, because it's something that was instilled in me as a student when I went to outdoor school from Mr. Haycock. When I come back and I see those same familiar faces as middle schoolers, it's a great experience, a great reunion. They're happy to see me in a different role other than a PE teacher. And I want you to know that the staff at Outdoor School, it's not just a job for them, it's a lifestyle. They truly believe in environmental literacy. And as we all know, that students don't all learn traditionally in the classroom. It's a practical experience that helps them develop. And the mission statement, I'm seeing the time run down, it's kind of making me rush, but the mission statement with Outdoor School, is to take action for the environment, and I'm here tonight to support that and take action. If I don't get an opportunity to teach there in the future, I still have those memories to this day, but I'm here tonight to try to keep those opportunities alive for future students, and I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Our final speaker signed up this evening is Timothy Redmond.
All right, superintendents and staff, board members, teachers, parents, family members, and guests. Rounding out the comments this evening, I want to play a little game and welcome anyone in attendance to join with me. I want to play a very quick lightning round of questions. So please raise your hand if any of these statements apply to you. You live in Carroll County? Yes. You grew up in Carroll County? Yes. You attended outdoor school? Yes. You attended outdoor school on your birthday week of all weeks and really had a hard time being away from your family for the first time. But at the end of the week, you had a blast, so much that you remember it vividly 30 years later. The hike to the homestead, the outdoor games, the educational sessions, all of it. Yeah. My little game was hopefully meant to underscore how impactful outdoor school is and how it can be. Outdoor school is something of an immense value to those who attend, both for outdoor instruction purposes, but also, as I found out, for one's social emotional development. Outdoor school directly hits at the core values of CCPS, including priorities, beliefs, and mores of our local community, as well as community participation, as well as indirectly relates to other core ideas. Now, I have 3 children who are in CPS or who are CCPS students or will be, with another one on the way, and it saddens me deeply to think of their school experience without outdoor school. I see this as CCPS is falling short of its mission moving forward and not adhering to its core values. I work professionally as a CPA, and I so understand the complexities in making a budget work. I think we must think of this in terms of a cost-benefit analysis, right? As we have highlighted this evening, the cost of eliminating outdoor school is great, but for what benefit? Yes, in the short term, here in FY26, this helps to balance the budget, but what about next year? Closing outdoor school doesn't stop the wave of impending cost increases that will, or should, happen, primarily teacher pay increases. We'll be right back here at this table again next year, with the same problems, but just without an outdoor school. I see the benefit here is pretty much nil. That's why I would suggest we postpone maybe a formal budget decision until the budget has included a long-term funding and expenditure projection so that we can really gauge the benefit of cutting outdoor school. And again, I presume it will be pretty small. The real matter of concern is the amount of funding that comes to the school system. As the largest employer in the county, the growth in the school system leads to the growth of the county overall. Business comes along for the ride. Both from a moral and business perspective, it makes sense to invest more resources in CCPS so that it can achieve its mission. Now, all that being said, I recognize tough choices must be made to balance the budget. I do commend the budget's ability to manage administrative costs, and I can't imagine all the hard work that is done to make ends meet. I just wanted to highlight a few uses of the fund balance, both the Winchester Building and the Teacher Induction Program, as items that could be reconsidered. In their place, could we instead place outdoor school? The Teacher Induction Program could be a very easy one-for-one swap, and it seems pretty hollow to include this expenditure at a time when teachers are not even provided a pay increase. At the very least, I request we consider using the fund balance to support the outdoor school, while I perhaps seek other ways to fund this vital program, federal grants, foundation grants, etc. In short, I think the elimination of the outdoor school requires some reconsideration and some creative budgeting. Thank you so much for your time and attention, and most importantly, the ability to speak to you this evening. Thank you.
That concludes the public citizens who signed up for comment. We'd like to thank all of you who spoke and all of you who are here in attendance this evening. And President Battaglia, Superintendent McCabe, we now move into the period of work session.
Thank you. Thank you for all the speakers. Dr. McCabe, I'll hand everything over to you.
One clarification that I just want to make is that from our public hearing is that we currently have 3 Title I schools in our county. Okay, we're here for our work session on the FY26 operating budget. In the annual budget process, we are at the stage where I presented my proposed FY26 operating budget to you on January 29th. I presented to you as a board a balanced budget that does not ask for any more funding from the commissioners than they have already committed to. It has been released to the public, and just now we heard direct comments from members of the public, and we've also been receiving emails from the public. Now the budget must transition from my proposal to your FY26 budget request to the county. The timeline we've set forth includes this work session this evening, where you can discuss my proposal, other options, and any other factors you wish to consider. At the February 12th board business meeting, we will again set aside time for you to discuss the FY26 budget. We have scheduled a special board meeting for February 18th for you to adopt your FY26 operating budget request to the county. Also, at the February 12th board meeting, separate from the operating budget, we will share the details of the plan to achieve fiscal compliance under the blueprint. This process will require far greater position reductions than those in my proposed FY26 operating budget. It will also require moving a large number of staff across schools. It is very challenging in this moment to weigh the reductions that I have proposed with other potential reductions that are coming, without yet seeing the entire list of changes that we could be faced with. Thus, the FY26 budget discussion at the February 12th board meeting will benefit from having the reductions as a part of the blueprint fiscal compliance available in the same meeting. Since I released my proposed FY26 operating budget to you, members of the public have asked me how I arrived at the reductions I've proposed. I would like to address that question briefly. First, it is important to recall that we did not enter the FY26 budget process hoping to make any reductions. When we saw our final fall enrollment figures, we were concerned that we did not see the enrollment growth we were hopeful to achieve. But even at the December 18th work session, we were hopeful that the worst case scenario might be that we would not have to make cuts to balance the budget, but would struggle to meet compensation requirements or make any system improvements. Then we received the governor's budget, and the impact was significant. The state pushed back teacher collaborative time, the 60-40 blueprint requirement, which is something many officials in Carroll were vocal about, but they lowered the per pupil foundation amount, which reduced our anticipated increase by $2.2 million. With other shifts in relative wealth, we faced an additional $1.7 million reduction from anticipated state revenue. These changes in the governor's budget are the reason we needed to propose the $3.6 million in reductions for FY26 simply to balance the budget. My first decision was to consider employee compensation, and in particular, the third year of the negotiated agreements with our support employees, AFSCME, CASE, and Food Services. At the January 29th meeting, I spoke about my disappointment with this reality. Improving employee compensation, which is a #1 priority for me, both to recognize the value of our employees and to stabilize the school system, is at risk. When I became superintendent, we had attrition at all levels, from senior staff through all schools and all departments. I made improving employee compensation my priority because I did not believe the system could continue long on the course we were on. We asked our support employees to accept their appropriate salary adjustments over a 3-year plan, and they committed to us in good faith on that goal. We told them we would bring them an increase in compensation similar to what we understood the blueprint would require for the other 2 bargaining units. We asked for 3 years because we knew we would have to address blueprint career ladder and minimum teacher salary requirements last year, and we felt we would need the 3rd year to finalize their compensation. We accomplished most of that. We were able to achieve the career ladders and teacher salary requirements last year and do not have that pressure facing us for FY26. But we need $3 million to finish the promise to our support employees. It is devastating to me not to make that whole. I seriously considered in my proposed budget offering an addition $3 million in reductions to finish that deserved work. However, $3 million more in reductions on top of the additional reductions we'll bring to you on February 12th for blueprint fiscal compliance did not seem tenable to me. I know we're a week away from the blueprint fiscal compliance plan, but I do want to provide you with the scope of what will be before you. We are still refining and double-checking and recalculating, but it would appear that blueprint fiscal compliance will bring an additional $7 million in proposed reductions, impacting approximately 100 additional positions. The impact of blueprint compliance on top of balancing the FY26 budget is as monumental as any annual process we have ever encountered here. So I made a very remorseful decision to not look for $3 million in further cuts to fund the support employees' contracts. But I did not, and I do not like where that leaves them. I formed a system work group in August to review and analyze blueprint fiscal compliance and provide me with a comprehensive plan, which I shared with you at the January board meeting. Through the process of the work group, various proposals were considered to meet fiscal compliance. Ultimately, it was clear to the work group that the impact will be in positions. As we shared through some comparative data at the January 29th meeting, most of our funding is embodied in staff, and most of our staff works in our schools. It was clear that we would need to consider all staff in all programs to achieve compliance. From the work group, we continued to review options and develop the plan that we will present on February 12th. 2 of my main items that were part of that plan were the outdoor school program and the 3 clerical FTE in central office. Once the state budget picture was clearer and the need to make reductions to balance the FY26 budget, I moved those 2 items from the February 12th Blueprint Fiscal Compliance Report to balance this FY26 budget. I selected those 2 items because of all the things you will see on February 12th with Blueprint Fiscal Compliance. They are the 2 reductions most removed from the core academic program and the classroom. To be clear, there are no great choices involved in this process. I had to choose from an array of bad choices. And now that the budget moves to the board, you are now in that same bad position. Another thing I did was to review the history of over $40 million in cuts made from FY09 through FY19. We summarized those for you at the last meeting. I find myself unable to fully convey how consequential that history is for where we are now in our FY26 budget and in Blueprint Fiscal Compliance. $40 million in system reductions matter. not just for this process, but for our school system. But for this process and blueprint compliance, we simply do not have the same base to consider because that history of cuts encompassed 375 positions, many important programs, and 3 schools that we closed. These things all matter. All are important. Losing them impacts our school system, and it limits our options today. It is also why I continue to speak about aligning expectations with our reality. For tonight's work session, we hope to provide you with some themes to guide your thoughts and your discussion on the budget. I also want to be sure that as you discuss various options, we share the consequences of each one. And we heard a lot of those consequences tonight with public comment. As I said, there are no great choices left after all of those years of cutting. It is important that we understand that for the sake of the system, our employees and our students, and for our collective expectations as we begin to confront other changes required by blueprint fiscal compliance on top of this FY26 operating budget. I'll ask staff to quickly share a few points, and then we'll move into questions and discussion.
Thank you, Dr. McCabe, and I hope my voice will hold up for a few slides. You have available tonight or on the screen the background summary slides that Mr. Burke presented earlier. We also can bring back the January 29th slides if you want to reference them at any point, any information you want to reference. At work sessions, you of course don't vote. However, often at work sessions through discussion, some consensus can form and some direction can be given as we proceed to the February 12th board meeting. And so what we want to try to do now with just a few slides before your discussion is maybe provide you some context, some options for the kinds of things you could consider beyond the very thoughtful background that Dr. McCabe just provided. It did occur to us that this hasn't been a very positive couple of weeks, and even one of the slides Rob presented was sort of other blueprint things we can't get to in this budget. So we did want to stop and say there are some sort of positive accomplishments that we've been able to do as a system in blueprint, and because they're finished, they're not pressure on your FY26 budget now. So we did accomplish the career ladder frameworks with the 2 certificated unions, and we did accomplish the minimum teacher salary requirements of blueprint. And so that's not something that needs to be done this year, which it otherwise would have been. And so there's not another $3, $4, $5 million there, whatever it would have been to finish that work. And I say that, I acknowledge as I say that if you're an employee represented by CASE, AFSCME, or food service, that doesn't help you. And Dr. McCabe has done a great job explaining how hurtful that is to us to have to bring that forward as we've done so far. But that's out of the way in terms of overall impact on the FY26 and beyond budget. We've expanded pre-K within existing space. We have a capital plan to expand pre-K space for the pre-K seats that the blueprint requires us to provide as a Board of Ed. And we've made good use of the state expansion grant in making available space, turning available space into full-day pre-K. But we've kind of maximized our ability to assume that expansion grant at this point. But we're not seeking to expand further in this budget, so there's a pressure removed for now. And then the state, the AIB and MSBE, the state board, adopted a joint policy on dual enrollment that sort of finally set some guardrails in place and put a structure around dual enrollment, because we were chasing those costs for many years in our relationship with the community college. Mr. Shockney's been able to work out a new dual enrollment memorandum of understanding with the college that applies those guidelines or guardrails from the state joint policy. And so we do think that we can now get a handle on the cost of dual enrollment and contain it going forward. So I offer that to you as some good news, I hope, or a couple of positives in an otherwise not so positive discussion.
Excuse me, could we elaborate on that just a little bit, that MOU concerning the dual enrollment?
You want to talk about?
Sure. So we've just finalized the memorandum of understanding with Carroll Community College. for next year. Probably some of there's a lot to it, but to summarize the changes, there'll be a limitation in the number of courses and the types of courses in which students can enroll at CCPS expense at the community college. Students will continue to be able to dual enroll and take additional coursework, but currently as it stands, CCPS is covering all costs for all students. The biggest change is that for students to be eligible to participate in dual enrollment starting next year is that they must meet the CCR, or College and Career Readiness Standard, which is identified in the blueprint and by the state. Students who meet that can enroll for up to 4 courses during the course of the year, 2 in the fall, 2 in the spring, at CCPS expense. Students could enroll in additional courses beyond that with guidance from their school counselor, but courses beyond that would be at the expense of the student and family. So that was a clarification that was provided to us as part of joint policy that's there. So that does help. That helps streamline our costs. We are also in the process of developing what we will be communicating out soon to our students, which we call our early college program, which is that pathway to an associate's degree that's identified in the blueprint. So more to come on that one in time. But essentially, Dr. Dorsey, the biggest changes for our students for next year, which will also provide opportunity while minimizing some costs, will be that the students need to meet the CCR standard to be eligible to participate in dual enrollment at CCPS expense. Students, again, who don't meet that standard could still participate, but it would be at the student's family expense. And then there'll be a limitation of 4 courses per year, 2 in the fall, 2 in the spring, for our students to participate in.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So where does that leave you as the Board of Ed as you receive this proposed budget from Dr. McCabe and now start your work on what will be your budget request to the county? I guess I would say one thing you have are the same options for better or worse that Dr. McCabe had as she prepared the budget to provide it to you. And there certainly could be, it's not all or nothing in any of these 3 categories. It could be a mix thereof, but you have the option of requesting additional revenue. That's an option. Doesn't mean you want to do that, but you could do that. You have the ability to accept the superintendent's budget as she's proposed it, whether you like it necessarily in all parts or not, and then that would become your proposed request to the county. Or you have the option to modify the superintendent's proposed budget and make any other changes you would like to. And that would sort of be driven by what your priorities as a board or a majority of the board might be. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. Or certainly it could be some combination of these 3 things. It's not as simple as it's one or the other of these choices, but you sort of have the same options in front of you that the superintendent had in the fall and winter as she put together a proposed budget for you. So what might your priorities be? That's for you to sort out and figure out, not tonight, or at least not just tonight necessarily, but over the course of the next few meetings. And I would suggest that you probably have to go through the hard thought process, just like Dr. McCabe and staff, over, what would those priorities be? And so we just pulled some things that were comments at the last meeting. It doesn't mean that there's not other things. There certainly could be lots of other things, but I think we all kind of agreed, or many people at least articulated, we really wish we would fund the 3rd year of the 3 agreements that have a 3rd year of salary attached to them. If that's a priority, where we sit right now, that would require additional reductions in revenue. So it wouldn't be so much about replacing one proposed reduction with something else. It would be about maintaining at least $3.6 million in reductions, whatever you use to get to $3.6 million, and finding another $3 million in reductions to honor those negotiated agreements. And honestly, upon reflection, I'm not sure I did a great job at the last meeting expressing the severity of those agreements. It's something we morally want to do. It's a core value and mission of the superintendent. They are also legally binding collective bargaining contracts with 3 of our labor units. And so if I didn't frame that well, I feel like in hindsight, maybe I sort of had that on its own slide as over here. I may have also, in hindsight, have presented that as another expenditure, along with utilities and insurances and other things. I could have had a line item there that said $3 million in the 3rd year of the master agreement. So one thing would be what is that priority, or where does that fall in the priorities? Moving on to the next bullet. Of the other reductions, the superintendent's proposed, where is the board as a majority in supporting any of those or all of those or none of those for that matter? And we'll come back to this last bullet again in a second. So, but are there other expenditure reductions you, the board, would like to look at? And a work session like this is a great opportunity, if you have some, to voice those, and then that gives us time as staff on behalf of the superintendent to sort of do some analysis and bring them back to you at the February 12 meeting in that discussion period. And so now would be a great opportunity to learn some of those and talk through them. What are some other factors or some unknowns still hanging out there? And these things hopefully will relate back. Dr. McCabe spoke a great deal about blueprint fiscal compliance, and I know it's confusing, and I know it's hard to sort of sort out. It is for us too. We're cutting the budget, and now you're talking about this other thing, blueprint fiscal compliance. The budget is about running the school system next year in terms of total revenue and total expenditures. Blueprint fiscal compliance is going to happen whether we change the budget $1. The blueprint requires us to spend our money in different ways than historically we can. So whether if we never get another $1, if we continue to run the school system on the same amount of money we're running it today, we have to spend that money at the school level very differently tomorrow than we spend it today. And that's going to require, as Dr. McCabe said, somewhere in the neighborhood of $7 million in position reductions. And then on top of that, it's going to require the movement of staff in very large numbers. So, for instance, there'd be some reductions, but then there'd also be, I'm still a teacher. I was a teacher this year, maybe even in the same grade level or the same assignment, certainly. But next year, I'm going to have to be a teacher at a different school because the blueprint requires us to spend our money in schools in a different way than we have in the past.
And I'll just add to that. I've said this a lot, and I hope it helps people to understand it. We've always funded our schools equally. Depending on where you go, most schools have a reading specialist. Most schools, have this, that, or the other. The blueprint requires us to fund schools equitably, which means based on the free and reduced meals, the ESOL or MLL population in that building, they may receive more funding, more staff than a school that does not have as many of those students. So it's a different way to look at funding each of our schools. And again, this is law. This is, it changes the way that we've spent the money we are currently spending on other things. The funding is restricted. So we no longer have the ability to make determinations about where the dollars go. The state is telling us where the dollars have to go. So that's very different than anything we've ever had to do.
Yeah, so it's hard without seeing all of it, and unfortunately, you and the public won't see all of that until the 12th. I think, as bad as that presentation might be on the 12th, at least then the full picture is there. And so right now, folks this evening and elsewhere are limited to commenting on what they've seen in the proposed FY26 budget. The fiscal compliance presentation on the 12th will open up a window much, much wider as to what folks probably are going to be interested in commenting on and what individually, as a community, members of our community might prioritize or rank one thing versus another. Another unknown is we know what the governor's budget, where the governor's budget as proposed leaves us at the moment, but the General Assembly meets until April 12, I believe, is sine die. So there's still time for the two chambers of the General Assembly to come up with the final state operating budget. And so we're working from preliminary numbers. We don't know for sure what the final budget will look like. It could theoretically get better. I guess also it theoretically could get worse, and then that's a whole different conversation. But something to bear in mind is if any of that revenue, anticipated revenue that we were hoping for, should get restored, then you have another challenging thought process to go through, which would be, okay, if now we suddenly have a bit more revenue than we were thinking we might get now, what do we do with that revenue? What is that priority? So that's something to keep in mind. And we've talked an awful lot about the 3 support agreements and where we sit right now, looking like we can't fund them. I talked a minute ago about them being legally binding agreements. It's not as simple as saying we can't fund them and then we move on with life. We have to engage our unions in a renegotiations, a legal renegotiations process. And it's sort of presumptuous to not recognize that we don't know what the outcome of those processes would be with each of those 3 units. We need to sit down with them in good faith if that's where this lands, and we need to try to work out a solution. But both parties have the full avenue of the law available to them in a renegotiations process, including impasse and so forth. So that's sort of something that we still need to keep an eye on and try to understand. And then Dr. McCabe in her remarks mentioned just the concept of bearing in mind what, as you make any decision, none of them great, what are the consequences of those decisions and what is a reasonable expectation to have from those decisions. We also recognize, just like it's hard for us, it may be hard for you to decide, well, okay, if I don't like these things or I can't support all of these proposed reductions, what else is there? And we can, literally go through all 13 categories of the budget and talk about those things. But Dr. McCabe talked a little bit about the process she went through and the things she thought about. We thought about a lot of other things too and brought them to her as concepts. This is where she landed, but those were none good things either. Some of them we sort of, at the December 18 work session, kind of said there's these other things we could consider, and they didn't seem very popular either that night. But we looked at things like bearing in mind that we still have about 100 FTE positions to deal with because of blueprint fiscal compliance. So there's that. We looked at reducing additional one-to-one student devices at more than the 3 grade levels being proposed, just as a kind of a rough working figure. Basically, every 3 grade levels that you would discontinue one-to-one would be approximately $1 million. And we spoke last time at the last meeting about that. That doesn't mean that there's no devices. That means we kind of revert to the system before of mobile carts for grade levels in schools. But also, those decisions aren't without consequences either. And if we didn't do a great job of making sure we said that, now's our chance. And Nick might want to chime in more than me, but we have to go back to a former system. In the meantime, we've updated a lot of curricula to have digital tools and apps and things as part of the curricula, and we've tried to offer training where we could and bring teachers up to speed teaching that way. This would require changes in the opposite way. Also, the state administers assessments on devices, and so we'd be in a position where teachers are teaching in one format and then children are taking the assessment in a different format. So none of these decisions are without
That's well said, Mr. O'Neill. Yeah, I mean, that's the, when it comes to making a transition, since the pandemic, we've adapted and transitioned to a different style or type of instruction using technology in a much greater way than we did prior to the pandemic. We did that for lots of reasons, throughout that process. And I think, we can make reasonable changes, but larger scale changes will come at, greater consequences. We have high stakes assessments on the MCAP, or the Maryland Comprehensive Assessment Program, that matters to us, and it matters to our families and to our kids. And we know that is a digital assessment. We know that when we're teaching using tech, that lends to students being successful, taking an assessment using tech. When there's a separation there, that creates challenges and gaps. So yeah, most definitely, any transition, and like Mr. O'Neill also alluded to as well, or said, we've adapted our curriculum to utilize these devices. We can make it, adjustments back, but again, it will come at a potential harmful effect.
So there's that. We talked about this at December 18th just as an option because, again, the blueprint is about spending money on academic services in schools. It's not, the blueprint, frankly, is not about class size, and it's also not about extracurricular type things. It's about the core educational program and how that money gets spent school by school based on the student populations in each school. So we had talked in December 18 about what are the things that are sort of outside of the blueprint that could be considered, and two of those things were athletics and extracurriculars. I suspect that they would be less popular than an outdoor school discussion. But for the sake of numbers, we have in our operating budget, we're invested at probably more than $3 million on those two things combined. But that's, again, these were things considered but not brought forward by the superintendent. We looked at our retiree health care plan and subsidy and had some conversations there. Our retirees are not part of a bargaining unit, and there's no master agreement. We ultimately did not move in that direction because there's, I don't know how to say, I'll try to say this succinctly. We don't have the most competitive retiree health program in the state of Maryland. We pay a flat subsidy. Most counties, except I think one on the Eastern Shore, carry sort of a rate sharing mechanism for where they budget separately. But if your health care is sort of 85-15 as an employee, it would continue that way as a retiree. That's not how we do it. We pay a flat subsidy. We looked at that subsidy. We felt like that wouldn't be popular, certainly not with our retirees. I don't know what it would say about retention and those kinds of things, but we looked at about $500,000 there and didn't move forward with that recommendation. We looked at different things we've considered with student transportation, pupil transportation, beyond the proposal to reduce the salary portion of the reimbursement formula from a 5% increase to a 3% increase. And I want to take a minute to be very clear for any of our bus drivers or our contractors' bus drivers who might be listening or watching or reading tomorrow. We're not proposing reducing current reimbursement or current salary provisions within the formula. We had built an early budget based on a 5% increase in that part of the formula. The superintendent's proposed budget reduced that increase from 5 to an increase of 3, but not a reduction in the current salary portion. But we looked at things that we brought forward separately before that the board pretty much told us that at that time, at least, those weren't things you were very interested in. We looked at going back and analyzing the start and end times of all of the schools to see if we could maximize the use of a single bus throughout the day more than we already have, to see if we could gain some savings there. We also looked at, we're one of two, I believe, and if I'm wrong, Mr. Hardesty can correct me, but we're one of two school systems in Maryland that does not have a walking radius for elementary students. We offer transportation to every elementary student. We looked at that as a possibility of implementing that, which in turn could reduce some buses. Ultimately, superintendent did not move forward anything beyond the formula change because, first of all, the board had sort of not expressed interest in the past. Secondly, we have, in those $40 million of cuts in the past that Dr. McCabe mentioned, a good chunk of that came from the transportation program. And I think I might have said this last time, but I think it's also important to bear in mind, just because something's a savings in our operating budget doesn't mean it's not a cost to someone else. And if we were to save money, when we save money in our transportation budget, that money is saved for us at the expense of our contractors. We finally have, post-pandemic, our transportation operation running at a fairly consistent basis again. We're not missing many routes anymore. And so that was another factor as to why I think the superintendent didn't move those forward. And then one other thing that we considered and ultimately didn't do was there's another part of the blueprint that requires a relationship with the local workforce development board on extending career counseling from not just in high schools but down through the middle schools at all grades. Blueprint required an initial 3-year phase-in of that process where each Board of Ed, each school system had to have a formal MOU with the local workforce development board and define that program. We have that in place. It phases out as, in terms of a required relationship via an MOU, it phases out of the blueprint after 1 more year. In the first 2 years of that program, ultimately in budget processes like this, superintendent board made a decision to fund that program, the cost of the MOU, through fund balance. But we knew by the end of it, we have to absorb those costs in the operating budget. And so we were intending to absorb those costs in the FY26 operating budget. The board certainly, and the board has many more options beyond the ones I'm sharing, but the board would have the option of saying, okay, let's go ahead and pay for that MOU one more time with fund balance, and then we'll deal with absorbing the cost permanently in FY27. So you would be doing something we've done twice, but you would be doing it with a firm deadline that at the end of next year, basically you would start your or the superintendent would start her FY27 budget planning process knowing there's a $500,000 gap to fill right there alone off the top. So that was something we thought about and then didn't move forward. Those, that's a short list, but those were the kinds of things that the superintendent challenged us to look at, bring her ideas, bring suggestions. The use of fund balance, we talked about it with utilities. That's not an ideal choice. There was a comment earlier about just trade the induction program for outdoor school. The induction program is true use of fund balance. It's a one-time cost to start it, and then it doesn't continue. Outdoor school is $1 million every year, so that's not an even trade. And for that matter, you could do both. If you want to use the fund balance, you could do the induction program, which is a true one-time use, and pay for something with fund balance. But you have the same structural deficit every year thereafter. You're going to start each process trying to figure out how to fill that gap, pay the bills, pay the inflationary costs, and deal with compensation. And so that's why those kinds of things didn't arrive in the superintendent's plan. I think I probably said more than enough, so we'll pause.
Yeah, Mr. Whistler had a...
I appreciate your time. Mr. Burke, Mr. O'Neill, probably some questions directed at you. I just wanted to... The inflationary rate that you use to calculate the budget, what was the number? What inflationary? Was it 3.0%, 2 point something? What number did you use to kind of figure in inflation?
Different by cost area.
Okay.
So health insurance about 10%.
10% for health. Okay.
Utilities upwards of 40, I think, on the two.
That
big
was really
ones.
a reset to the market. So
Right.
we're really working with our agencies to identify the trends in the costs. It's not an estimate of inflation applied to the budget. It's really
It's targeted.
expenditure estimate based on actuals, and working with our agencies to identify, what's needed, and then accumulating that together as an entire budget. So it's really just not an inflator adjustment.
Gotcha. Can you kind of go into your success in the past? I mean, have you been pretty much on target every year? Have there been years where you've been like way off or not so way off as far as the inflationary?
We've been on target really well in a lot of areas for a long time, and unfortunately, I think it just sort of caught up to us in utilities. There were many years in that 10-year window where we actually reduced the utilities line item to sort of help balance those budgets. And I probably can't do it while I answer your question, but I could sit here and figure it out.
Yeah, that's okay. I don't need specifics. I just wanted to, anecdotally, if you've been pretty much on target. And then...
And you could say, we don't propose that we have a monopoly on being right by any means, and some of it's just luck and timing. We bid rates at favorable times and maintain those contracts at favorable times, and we had rates locked before inflation went where it went, and then that's when we went back out to bid most recently for electric and natural gas, which are the two biggest drivers of that. Healthcare, we've had good years in that 10-year window to the point that we actually were able to do some, I forgot what we called them, premium holidays for employees. So in some of those that decade of very challenging times, health insurance wasn't necessarily one of those issues. We've been chasing medical inflation and claims usage for the last 2 years.
Everybody has, really. And then to the computer issue, you mentioned in the past that we roughly save $1 million if we don't do one-to-one devices. Is that an annual $1 million because of tech refresh and replacement, or is that just a one-time, you stop them and you save $1 million and that's it? Is that figured in the budget?
I will see if Nick or Mr. Davis wants to come forward, and I probably should let him do that rather than give you my understanding. But my understanding is that we buy devices at certain grades, and then there's
on a cyclical basis.
We provide devices at 6th grade, and that carries with the child through 7th and 8th, and then student devices can only be bought with a 3-year warranty, and so then it's time to replace that amount again, and so for every well, there's Gary.
Good evening. So it's a replacement cycle, and when we went to the one-to-one, the decision was made to start kids off with a computer that they keep through middle school, through high school, and with elementary. Now, when we did the elementary where we didn't do one-to-one starting last year for K through 2, so then it would be 3 through 5. So we were buying new computers at the beginning of the third grade for kids. So it's at that time that we're at the point now where we need to replace, because we started buying them when the pandemic, and we kind of phased them in as the money became available. So we're at that point where it's time to replace.
Right.
So by eliminating we're not replacing a full set of third graders, but the following year it would be the same thing. We would not, but we would have to replace some because, and here's the key, this is the thing, we have to maintain a bunch of carts in the schools anyway because kids forget to bring their laptops in, or they're broken, so they need a loaner. So we maintain carts in all the schools regardless. We need to increase those number of carts so we can have approximately, and it varies. With the schools that are bigger, it might be a little bit more, but have 1 cart per grade level for if we're not going to be one-to-one. So some of those computers are computers that are out of warranty, right? So we don't get rid of the computers that are out of warranty. I don't want anybody to think that, but we don't. But once they're out of warranty, if they're broken, like if the monitor's broken, it's not worth the money to replace the monitor. You may as well get a new computer, kind of thing. So yes, the answer to your question is technically it would be about $1 million a year, but there would be we would have to start replacing the loaner. So it wouldn't be, the first year would be $1 million, and it would be less than that for previous years. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm just trying to understand whether or not, for example, if my colleagues and I decide to eliminate the computers, is that just $1 million one time, or is it built in the budget over years for tech refresh, $1 million? I don't want to try and replace computers to fund something else if it's just one-time money. So I'm just trying to determine if it's one-time money.
Right. So yes, $1 million this year, and as the years go on, it will probably
it supplements. Right?
We will have to supplement
recurring funds.
It might be $800,000 or something like that.
Yeah. The other thing is that today it's $1 million for 3 grades, and then with inflation, 3 years from now it's $1.2 million. Well, I understand that.
And just to make everyone aware, I mean, there's a lot of talk in the industry, and all the major manufacturers are trying to give best guess estimates of any potential impacts of the tariffs. And the guess right now is there could be a 10 to 15, maybe higher percent. So by the time we would be buying it June, there may be that impact as well. Yeah. Just something to kind of keep in mind.
Yeah, let's just hope the politics doesn't affect us too much. But, and again, I don't mean to monopolize the time, but I appreciate the staff laying out the bold. I mean, this is more, in my opinion, not just a $3.6 million shortfall. This is a $6.6 million shortfall. Because in my opinion, it's just unconscionable that we don't honor commitments to our three bargaining groups. And again, Mr. Burke, Mr. O'Neill, you correct me if I'm wrong, but I was on my calculator. I think our average salary is about 85 grand per employee with salary and fringe. Is that right? And
we tend to review them by group of employee, not
sure, I
as
get
an
it,
overall average.
But roughly speaking,
could be
it's
accurate. Yeah.
But roughly speaking, $3 million is about 34 to 40 educators. And so I would, as much as it pains me to say this, I would appreciate you guys coming back to us next week and say, look, if we were to make good on that $3 million, and if we were to make 34 to 40 staff cuts, this is where we would do it, and this would be the impact. Because I think we have not just a $3.6 million hole to fill, we have a $6.6 million hole to fill. But that's just my perspective.
Yeah.
And
we can do that. I think what you'll see on February 12th is 100 staff cuts or staff changes, and so like sitting here, right, and we'll simmer on this, because I'm thinking, gosh, where would we go?
I agree.
After the 100 that we're going to look at on February 12th. But we will certainly do our due diligence and get back to you with what that could look like.
Thank you. And just to give the audience perspective, because perspective is everything with me. If you think we've got it bad in Carroll, you have another thing coming when you look at other counties. Howard County has a $104 million deficit. They're laying off 348 positions. Hartford has a $60 million deficit. Montgomery, a $30 million deficit, laying off 150 educators. Baltimore County has a $3 million deficit, even after laying off hundreds of employees last year. So if you think we got it bad, we don't. Our staff has been very good, and I'm really proud of what they've done. So any criticism lobbed and thrown to our staff is just unfounded. Folks just don't understand how hard they're working, how much we've been anticipating these things. And I have been screaming from the rooftops since I ran for this position 3 years ago that blueprint was untenable, unsustainable, that we need the help of our unions, especially in Annapolis, to say, wait a minute, these mandates are going to hurt us in the long run. Because if you look at the funding model and the funding per pupil 7 years from now, some categories of learners, the funding per pupil that we have to spend doubles. And you cannot tax your way out of this at the state level or the local level. And I do not want to ask our commissioners for another dime, because we've got to live within our means. And we have got to make sure that we just do what we can with what we've got. And with that, I will yield.
Ms. King, I was going to start going around and see if anybody wanted to make any comments or had any questions. So if you want to go ahead first.
All right. I think I would like more clarity on what it would look like to reduce extracurriculars. I know you said that was an option available. Do you know what that would look like? The clubs, perhaps?
It would mean there
would be none.
There wouldn't be any.
Okay.
There would not be extracurricular activities. It would be obviously it would be very difficult to pick and choose. So it would be a all or none. So all of the things that take place outside of the student day connected with the school day.
So, like, to round that out for you, maybe let's take athletics. And I'm doing this from memory, which is never great, but we have over $2 million somewhere in our operating budget to pay for the annual costs of athletics. So those costs would be in areas like transportation to get student teams to and from events, officials, game officials, coaches. We pay teachers or employees who serve as coaches an additional amount of money per season. So when you add up all of those things, it's upwards of $2 million. But it would be an elimination of those things to save that money. And so that's, none of these things are good. That's, for each person, what's the worst thing will be how, what their own value system leads them to, but there are no great choices. That's probably why superintendent ended up with the proposal she ended up with as opposed to some of these other things.
And I think another question I have is, do we know how much outdoor school cost during the pandemic? Was it equal to when we actually went to the actual place? Like, where is these, what is it, like 2 million, 1 million -ish?
1.1 million. It's all in the people. So we don't own the outdoor school property or buildings. The county government does. So our costs our savings in that proposal is all in the 9.8 FTE or whatever the total position that are housed there would be. And I think we said this last time, and I probably haven't said it tonight. That doesn't mean that our goal would be that no one necessarily lose their employment. So it doesn't mean that the 9.8 positions housed there today, that the folks in those jobs wouldn't have a different job somewhere in Carroll County. It's just that the savings would come out of that part of the budget, and through attrition, hopefully, they would find a different role that they're certified for or qualified for. But we have no other costs beyond staff tied to the outdoor school. Maybe a little bit in materials, but not much.
All right, because I think I was wondering whether we could revise maybe the outdoor school curriculum. I know a lot of high schoolers, really like outdoor school. They think it's a great life-changing experience, a great volunteer opportunity for service hours, but I don't think there is another area. Dr. McCabe did an amazing job kind of balancing out the different things. So I was wondering if we could maybe integrate outdoor school curricula into, our current curriculum, or maybe shift things around if possible, like maybe see if there's things that we can retain from outdoor school that, the students really like. And, outdoor school isn't something I know a lot of students don't want to see go, but if budgeting issues is such a big deal, especially because it is a lot of money compared to some other things, if we could maybe incorporate it somewhere else.
The outdoor school program is an extension of our curriculum. So yes, most definitely there could be some integration of activities maybe that were historically utilized or implemented at outdoor schools. Some are very unique and specialized to the facility and the place and the environment. I don't want to diminish that in any way, shape, or form. But yes, Ms. Kang, to answer your question, there could be some activities that could be integrated into our curricula.
Thank you.
And do you have anything?
I do. I have some comments, and I guess I should preface it with that. I drafted these comments before this evening's meeting and before hearing the gravity of the additional $7 million in staff reductions that we are going to be facing and learning more about next week. But I would be remiss if we didn't turn every stone to see if there are some things that we could save. And I was just going over just the idea of potentially swapping outdoor school for the one-to-one computers in middle schools. The entire board has received many, many emails over the last week, and I read every single one of them. I'm grateful for those community members who reached out to us. I'm very grateful for the community members who came out this evening to speak with us. Obviously, I can't share them all, but I have permission to share a few out of the emails that we've received in support of outdoor school and positive outcomes of outdoor school. Gene Baker incorporated mentoring skills he learned as a student counselor into the workplace management styles, fostering effective team environments. Hunter Turco credited skills developed at outdoor school, contributing to his success in earning Society of Manufacturing Engineers 30 Under 30 Award. John Welker returned to work at Oshawa during college, inspired by his meaningful experiences at outdoor school. Brian Wilbur, owner of E.W. Beck's, volunteers at Oshawa 35 years later, driven by the lasting impact outdoor school had on him. Encouraged by her time at outdoor school decades ago, Nikki Myers has recently returned to Oshawa to complete a master's naturalist course. Katie Dell includes her outdoor experience in the cover letter of every job application she has ever submitted. Diana Roman Devers earned a BA in biology, an MS in environmental science, became a master's naturalist, an environmental educator and naturalist, and is now the environmental program manager for Patapsco Heritage Greenway. All, she says, is a result from her experience at Outdoor School. Inspired by Outdoor School, Donovan Villejas pursued an environmental economics course in college using economic theory to address environmental challenges. Dr. Crystal Trump is currently a practicing physician who attributes learning teamwork, minimizing waste, and a sense of community to her time at Outdoor School. Jonathan Wareheim earned his bachelor's of science in environmental science and attributes his passion for the field to Outdoor School, using it to purpose diverse roles such as geographic information systems analysis, geologic research, and environmental policy work. And my final comment from someone who is not an alum, but Tom Ackerman, the vice president of the Chesapeake Bay Foundation, highlighted findings from the 2023 Future of Jobs report, which identified a sustainability specialist as the second fastest growing role globally. Outdoor School is critical in preparing students for this emerging job market and instilling environmental stewardship, problem-solving skills, and a deep understanding for sustainable practices. So again, this was just a few, many more than 100 emails that we received in the last week. Before COVID, my understanding is that we did not provide laptops on a one-on-one basis. It was to students in specific circumstances, such as those in special education or participating in targeted grant funding programs. The evidence on whether one-on-one computing initiative improves academic outcomes for middle schoolers is mixed. However, I really want to echo the sentiments from Mr. O'Neill and Mr. Shockney that it's important to note that all MCAP testing is now conducted on computers. Without one-on-one devices, our middle school students may be less prepared, less comfortable, and not as computer literate for these assessments. Even if they know the material, their performance on the test could suffer. This presents significant risk to academic outcomes. We must consider whether the community is willing to accept these risks in order to save Outdoor School. Due to unfunded blueprint mandates, our school system is likely unable to fund both. I would like to gather feedback. I'd love to hear from the community. My email is on the website. Please reach out to me because it's one thing to say that we want to save Outdoor School. I am an Outdoor School alum. I completely understand that sentiment. Would we be willing to substitute it for another large expense that will be at the potential expense of academic achievement? So I would love to hear from the community whether that sounds like something that are we willing to potentially, our state scores go down in order to save Outdoor School. So thank you for your patience with those long comments.
Dr. Malvo, did you have any comments or questions?
There's a lot to follow up here with. Well, I just want to thank those who gave those public comments. You were heard. We appreciate the community reaching out, and as Ms. Zimmer said, we certainly received a lot of emails and feedback. I guess, I wanted to be clear that it's personal for us as well. Maybe I shouldn't speak on behalf of the whole board, but I think it is personal for all of us. I mean, I have a father in the system, or I'm a father of a child in the system who is in middle school, and he participated in Outdoor School last year, and I saw the impact that it had on him and his friends and the socialization that it brought. I understand that, within the restraints of a four-walled classroom, that there's much that will not be learned potentially. And I think that's why we know that some of the the strongest public school systems in the world are in Scandinavia, who look to the outdoors and so forth to bolster their education for their students. Even as a study abroad coordinator, understanding what can occur outside the classroom. And so I understand outdoor school in terms of why that can be such an asset. And along those lines, you know, as we consider, well, with outdoor school, could we maybe make some changes with it that allow it to still exist, yet be more affordable? You know, if it's a reduction in days, if it means that maybe it's not overnight in the amount that's spent with overnight services and electricity and so forth, but do we have as much of a breakdown of the itemized costs for outdoor school to work with, to understand in that decision-making process, you know, to try to keep it in place?
We'll bring some itemization back to the 12th discussion period.
Great, great. A little bit more here, and maybe this is a question for you, Mr. O'Neill, in terms of operations. There's a great increase, I understand, in electricity and the bills and so forth. Are you able to, again, expand on that or expound on that a little bit?
Sure. I don't know if you know when we bid our contract for both electrical, electricity and natural gas expired or was expiring, I want to say about 8 months ago, maybe a little bit more. So we have to go back out to bid. We have to go back out to market to renew the contract. We knew that as we were doing that, it was in a time period of a pretty high and increasing inflation. So we anticipated rate increases. We now have and I'll have to get the dates, and I can do that by the next meeting. We now have 8 or so months of actual experience of rates under those new contracts. And what we're seeing is we're projecting that if you do that over a fiscal year, if you project those increased costs over a fiscal year, we're seeing about a $3.3 million increase total in those two utility areas. And so that's not. I think when we brought the award of bids, if we look back at that meeting, we probably mentioned that, like, this is not the time we really want to be out to bid. We do use energy consultants just like we use benefits consultants, and so they were preparing us for an expectation that that we were going to see some pretty significant inflationary increase. And then at the same time, to Mr. Whistler's earlier questions, through an otherwise really terrible decade, we actually had very positive experience with utilities and used utilities to balance the budget over that period of time. So a different way of looking at it is, if we hadn't reduced our utilities line item 2 or 3 times in those years, we might be much closer to whole today than we are. So I guess it goes back to there's consequences for every decision that's ever been made, and sometimes they sort of catch up to you.
Thank you.
Dr. Dorsey?
So this is truly one of the darkest times. I know Mrs. Battaglia and I have been on the board together for a number of years, and this sort of ranks right there with COVID. I hate to say it that way, but it almost feels like that. We need to invest in people is where I'd like to come from. Again, I love all of the comments that we've been receiving concerning outdoor school. I think we can all get personal concerning outdoor school. If we haven't attended it ourselves, certainly our children, our grandchildren, our other family members and friends, everybody speaks very highly of outdoor school. So again, I think it would behoove us to certainly look at how we might be able to save that, whether it's going to be a reduction in the days or fees. I'm not sure what we charge now as far as any fees are concerned.
$75.
The only fee is associated to help cover the cost of the meals currently.
I know in some of our emails, people have suggested that they would be willing to even have an increase in fees if that would help to keep the program afloat. So that's something else I think we can take a look at with that. I agree. I mean, I hate to get rid of the technology, for the middle grades, but again, I think it certainly is something that we have to consider. I know our third through fifth graders, that's going to be ending. And again, we start testing in third grade. So if we really want to make sure that the kids have access to the computers and can actually multitask on the computers the way that they would be required to do during testing, we certainly want to make sure that our third graders are prepared with that. So here we have that we're ending it through with the third through fifth. So I agree that we can certainly consider going to the middle schools as well. We have got to invest in our people. I think we just really have to do all we can to honor our contracts with our employee groups, because they certainly work hard. And again, I know no one is saying that, you know, they're not deserving of that. We're just saying that this is the situation we find ourselves in. But again, I think we really need to look hard to make sure that we are investing in our people. A couple of things that have not been said are not very popular. One, I'm just going to question the Winchester building. What do we have in mind for the money that we have assigned with that? What's the breakdown?
The
do you
major
know?
systems, yeah. So we purchased this building from the county, I want to think in fiscal 17, Dr. Dorsey, but I'll go verify that. I know Mr. Guthrie was superintendent at the time, so we inherited a building that we don't have a funding mechanism to address the system needs here like we do with all of the schools. And so we've been on a clock knowing that we don't have a funding pattern to address the system needs of this building, and we were unwilling to even consider using the funding pattern that we have available for school capital needs to deal with it. And then there was this, like, when was that? 2 years ago, there was this bizarre storm that,
I
remember that?
remember.
And we lost the roof on the building. And so for 2+ years now, we have a temporary roof on the building.
So the plan is that we would,
The money would be for
Use
the
the
roof
money.
and the HVAC in the
Okay.
building, yeah. But, and both are on the roof, so, yeah. So we're sort of on a, I don't know how long a temporary roof can, can go, but it's gone for a couple of years now.
okay. And can you put up the slide again concerning, I don't think we had it in this packet, but the one on the fund balance? It's just sort of remind me again of our range there.
We can, if you give us a second, Ms.
Right.
Bowers, we'll get that loaded.
Because again, I'm thinking, I know it's not popular, but we might need to take a look at what more we can do with that. And again, I know it's just for the year, but we've got to at least sort of get over a hump here. And it's really hard talking about all of this with so many unknowns still out there. So again, just sort of review where we are with that. And I'll just say this while you're pulling this up. I mean, I've always gone under the understanding that we have not because we ask not. I don't think anyone is really that interested in one sense with approaching the commissioners for more, but you know, we might have to be at the point where we just really have to itemize and again share our dire needs and ask. 50% chance of something maybe happening with that. So thanks for pulling this up. So
There are a sequence of, excuse me, of a couple of slides. These slides are from your January 29th meeting, which
Okay.
was just for the superintendent to propose her budget. That's what that meeting was about. So the official number, the official audited number of the unassigned fund balance occurs at the close of every fiscal year once the final audit is in. And so, you know, technically the number is 18.1 million. But, and I don't remember what month, but at one of your monthly Board of Ed meetings, we brought forward the action which you approved to assign $6 million into the FY26 budget. And so even though the audited number is 18.1, there's actually $6 million less than that available. And then there's another .6 million or 600,000 in other uses of fund balance. They might be on the next slide, but one of them is the transportation formula. So that, that 18.1 minus the 6 million you assigned, and the 6 million was 5 million for the systems in this building and 1 million for the teacher induction program with Towson University. That would leave you at 11.5 million. Now that number is static in terms of an annual audit, Dr. Dorsey, but it's not a static number in the sense that we cannot overspend our budget, obviously, legally and morally and in every other way. And it's pretty impossible, even with your own personal checking account, let alone a $450 million budget, to spend it to the penny.
Right.
And just think about it, like for anybody who's listening and thinking about this, theoretically, the only way you could even come close to spending it to the penny is that there were no changes from July 1 to June 30. Every employee in place on July 1 was still there the same way on June 30. People go on leave, people quit, just staffing changes alone. You're going to have an annual surplus. You can't spend more than you have, so you have to be careful not to do that. And just those kind of natural changes, even just with a staffing example, you're going to have an annual surplus at the close of every fiscal year. That's the money that becomes your unassigned fund balance. You have a policy, a Board of Ed policy, which is based on a Governmental Accounting Standards Board recommendation or what do they call them? Directives that that says a lot of things. There's a couple of things listed here. It says things like you should not spend your fund balance, which is one-time money, on ongoing things. You should only spend it on things that are truly one-time uses. Generally, that is how the Board of Ed has used its fund balance. There's been a few times where we've sort of towed that line a little bit and used it as kind of a bridge to get to from where we are today to a future budget where we would phase it all in, and there's some of those embedded here. But the policy also says, excuse me, that you can't maintain a fund balance. You need to have a fund balance that's a minimum of 1% of your budget and no more than 5% of your budget. And those are what those numbers would reflect. So we're right in the, as Mr. Burke likes to say, the sweet spot. Well, there's the
Yes,
thing.
okay.
So there's that. And we put the utilities in. The transportation admin formula, some years ago, I'll say maybe fiscal 19-ish, we were in a situation where we were losing bus contractors. We at one time had almost 50 bus contractors. Today we have something like 37, 38 bus contractors. Certainly not many people were calling us asking to become bus contractors, and the bus contractors had endured some of those 10 years of cuts that Dr. McCabe refers to. And so we engaged with them in some good faith discussion to try to come up with a plan for the future relative to the formula. The Board of Ed made whole most of that plan. One element of the formula is something we call the administrative allotment. It's a portion of money that's designed to sort of cover the contractor's overhead as a business, overhead costs as a business. The report from the Joint Committee proposed increasing that amount of money per bus in the formula for the administrative allotment from, I want to say, like $1,800 at that time to $3,100 at the end, or $2,150 at the time to $3,100 at the end. And we were at a place in that budget year where we couldn't quite get to that last piece, and so the Board of Ed agreed that we would phase that in over 5 years using fund balance, kind of like the discussion on the MOU with career counseling. So we said we'll put 1 year's worth in the operating budget in year one, and pay for the other 4 parts of it with fund balance, and then in the next year we'll add 1/5 to the operating budget and pay for 3 parts with fund balance. We're now at the last year of that. This would be the final year of that phase in, and I guess that's it on fund balance. Does that help? Does that answer your question?
I was again trying to see what those minimums and maximums were and where we are.
All right, Mr. Whistler.
Yeah, thank you. I do have some closing comments, and one of our speakers earlier today spoke about fat in staff, cut the fat in staff. Just for the public's benefit, we don't have fat in our staff. We compete with Garrett County on being last as it relates to staff per pupil. So I don't know how we can how we can trim any more from central office. We are truly lean. For me personally, just so that my colleagues know and staff knows, I am very reluctant in supporting any notion of using fund balance for recurring costs. I'm also very hesitant in even considering anything, asking anything more from the commissioners than what they've already budgeted. Not that I work for them, but our commissioners are saddled with about $33 million to fund fire and EMS. They're going to soon receive another $2 million bill to start kicking in more towards teacher pensions. And we just can't keep taking from the commissioners. They have been more than supportive over the years, way over MOE, and we need to live within our means. Again, I look forward to the staff coming forward and talking about how we can maybe do some potential staff reductions to cover that $3 million hole for our employee groups. We need to fulfill our commitment and our promises to those 3 employee groups. And I understand more cuts may be on the horizon with regards to blueprint mandates, but that's nothing that we can control. It is so important that the public get involved, go to Annapolis, and direct their anger and ire there and not at us or the commissioners. Our bus drivers, I don't want to see what happened in Howard County happen here last year. We have a tremendous problem attracting drivers, and I would like to see us maintain our commitment of 5% for the bus drivers. Also, I was not elected to close one of our 44 schools in Carroll County. Outdoor school is one of our 44 schools. We must find a way to keep outdoor school open. I don't think anybody on this board was elected to close a school. It is one of our 44 schools. It must stay. And I am in favor of reducing and eliminating the computers to pay for it. Knowing that it's a recurring cost, I understand the risks, but we have phenomenal teachers that always find a way, and I know our parents and our teachers can do it. I know they can. I recall the comments from that one speaker. Mama's boy went away to Camp Hoshua and came back, not so much a mama's boy. 2 of my 4 sons also attended, and they both were mama's boys, let me tell you. My wife attended outdoor school. It is part of our culture, it is our heritage, and we must keep it. And I am so upset with folks in Annapolis trying to tell us how to run our schools, and their mandates tying the strings, tying the hands of our unbelievable and capable and talented staff and educators makes me frustrated, because they don't know how to do Carroll County like we do. I appreciate the comments from my colleague about the research showing the use of laptops. I think that's very important, but I totally understand the potential impact on our academic results. But those are my closing comments, and I look forward to even harder discussions next week. But we can do it. We can do it.
Well,
I know we can.
And again, the power is with us, because again, I mean, that's one of the main priorities that, our Maryland Association is really stressing. It's local control. It's how we go about moving forward in these rough times. Again, I think what you'll plan to do is to come back maybe with some options now based on some of this to.
We'll cost out the things that each of you have asked for and bring those to the, there'll be a discussion item for the operating budget on the February 12 agenda, and so we'll start with providing the answers to those questions. And by the time that agenda item occurs that evening, you'll also have the blueprint fiscal compliance information in front of you.
So you'll have a lot of changes to look at.
And just a point of clarification, when we're asking the public to advocate for Carroll County Public Schools in Annapolis, can we explain to them how they can go about doing that?
Dr. McCabe, just
the best way is to contact your delegates here in Carroll County who are down in Annapolis, sharing Carroll County's views on the issues at hand. You can also go on the Annapolis State House Congress website and look at the delegates and senators who are on Ways and Means and Appropriations and write directly to them. And at the February 12th meeting, we will have that information ready for people who want to take that home with them.
Thank you.
I'll finish up with some comments I had. All right, first I'll start with the emotional side, and I'll get that out of the way. Born and raised here in Carroll County. I attended outdoor school. My husband attended outdoor school. 2 of my kids have attended, and next year, my youngest would be attending. Here's the thing about Carroll County. All these parks, and because Hoshua is a park, and I want everyone to just kind of pay attention to what I'm about to say. It is open to the public. Okay? Think about that. It is open to the public. All of our parks are open to the public. Piney Run. We have Charlotte's Quest outside of that's in Manchester, and I hear from my daughter all the time that there's a lot of times they go and they do walking field trips over to Charlotte's Quest, and they do nature trails and nature walks. Piney Run was saved not too long ago by, at the time, I believe it was Commissioner Boucher, because that was in danger of being shut down. So he was able to say that. We have parks that are open to the public, and that includes Hoshua. So I want you to think about that. Anybody can go at any time. We do have Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, and 4-H in our county as well. The speaker had talked about how Girl Scouts had, that's why she was so used to going camping, is because of Girl Scouts when she went to Hoshua. I was in that same realm as well. So these are other opportunities we do have in the county. We can make sure as a school system, we reach out to those organizations, and they have their flyers and their information on our community tables in our schools to make sure our students have those accessibilities. Now, my kind of aha moment, and Ms. King, you hit everything I have written down, and then I've kind of talked to Dr. McCabe about a couple times. I get outdoor school is a very sensitive topic, and it is so important to everybody, and everyone loves it. But it's not technically a school to us. It is a program. We don't own it. We don't have a separate budget for maintaining the buildings. It is a program that we have offered in this county forever. And I get it, because I loved it too. But I still go there out to Hoshua, and I walk those trails, and I hear the kids that are there doing their week there at school. And so, again, it's still there. Everyone can go at any time. What if we looked into doing outdoor classrooms at our individual actual middle schools? This gives the students a sense of pride in their actual school and a sense of community. It's like a beautification. It can also be extended, not just 6th grade for 1 week at one place. This is extended 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, where all the curriculums in that one school can do things in that beautification project. They can, again, incorporate. You can incorporate art, you can incorporate music, science, different sciences for it, physical education. There's all kinds of things that can be incorporated in this. And it actually would not cost the school system much at all compared to some $1 million, because the teachers are already there at your schools. The PTOs and PTAs can get involved with this. Partnerships with various businesses in that community would be willing to help, whether it be Lowe's, Home Depot, the Mill, Bauman's. I mean, a lot of our businesses like to do things with our individual schools. And again, this gives the kids a sense of responsibility, accountability, the problem-solving skills, the teamwork skills, and they have that sense of involvement in their actual school. Now, grants. We did hear some emails about that we looked into grants. Well, as with anything we had a grant for a one-time position. And when the grant runs out, the position runs out, and that position goes away. So let's say we find a grant for outdoor school for one more year. Well, then we're right back to where we are right now. The grant goes away, and then we have to get rid of the program and propose it again for another year. I hate the term because even during COVID, we heard it all, kicking the can down the road. I hate that term. And I hate to say, I'm going to be the one to say, rip the Band-Aid off. Unfortunately, this has been, it is a very emotional time for a lot of people because they have memories there. But when we have the state telling us, you must spend your money the way we tell you to, and we're only one of the last counties in the state to actually offer this program. And it's sad that we have to even talk about this. But we are lucky to have other programs available that kids can be involved in, like Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts and 4-H. And those are even programs that kids take on with them. Whether they, do anything with the environment, ag. So there's a lot of other opportunities we can look into. None of this is what we wanted. We've been accused of mismanagement of funds. That's not the case. Again, as Mr. Whistler had stated numerous times, this is from the state. This is law. And it sucks. And I'll just say that. Mr. Member, like you said, continue sending the emails. Give us ideas, though. Please, give us ideas. Unfortunately, we can't fundraise to pay people's salaries. If that happened, you're on a PTA, you would have teachers knocking on your door for a raise. And I don't think that would work good. Yeah, I don't think that'd be good. But that's something we can't do, unfortunately. We're not permitted to do that.
But Ms. Pataglia, you talk about like a lot of the outdoor kinds of activities for students at schools.
Yeah.
Our science curriculum across the grade levels involves kids in different projects and activities outside on their school campus areas.
Yeah, but I think incorporating this, it just, I think it would involve them a little bit more pride into it. It's not just 1 week of going, I rolled in the mud. It's actually like, hey, we're going to go outside today and we're going to talk about this piece in science or this piece in art and how to add to it. Like I said, like a sense of pride in school community that whole outdoor classroom can bring just to like North Carroll Middle or East Middle. Like, it's a space, and it can continue to grow and be maintained by 6th, 7th, and 8th grade.
Okay, and you're specifically talking about the middle schools?
Yes, yes. Yeah, specifically the middle schools and incorporating that.
I think, personally, I'd appreciate knowing more about what that would look like. Because my understanding is that there's a good deal of curriculum with the outdoor school as well. And so I'd want to know more about what you're considering in terms of, how at the school itself would translate.
Because again, it's not just the 1 week thing. That's what outdoor school is right now. It's 1 week. Being at the physical school they go to, it's year long. It'd be year long. They can even develop an environmental club, beautification club, some type of level there as well. Like I said, it's that sense of pride and ownership of something they've created there. So it's not just a 1-week learning experience, it is a continuous learning environment there at the physical school.
Understanding that grants are only good for 1 year, are there grants that we,
Not that we're aware of. So tonight or right now is far from the first time outdoor school's been a discussion. It was a discussion in all of those years that Dr. McCabe's talked about. At one point, we actually did, in earnest, tried to pursue some grant opportunities to sustain outdoor school. And I remember with one local foundation in particular, sort of the response was, we don't really award grants for ongoing operating costs, and so we were sort of turned down in that instance. For the stability of your budget, using grants to pay for something ongoing, in my mind, is not much different than using your fund balance to pay for something ongoing. And the thoughts about fees too. It's hard to budget on the promise that somebody will pay a fee, because they might not pay a fee, and then I'm not sure what would happen in that instance, but we can cost that out. I know Dr. Dorsey asked earlier, so we will cost that out. Those things are risky, and it's hard to, we try to budget based on known ongoing revenue, because that's properly how you would budget.
I appreciate that. I just, coming at it from the making sure that no stone is unturned.
Sure.
Right.
But I appreciate the clarification.
Right.
And we're not opposed to looking again. I mean, we would do that. We would see if we could find grant funding. There's a little bit less likelihood of grant funding, it would seem, right now than in the past. But we would be willing to look at that, certainly.
And as Mr. O'Neill said, most grants, especially STEM grants, environmental grants, are more for projects, not ongoing operating costs.
I had a question, and maybe this is thinking a little bit outside the box. We heard from Mr. Whistler about how Hartford and Howard County and all these other counties are suffering, and no one seems to like the blueprint for a number of reasons. A lot of counties are suffering. Are we talking to those other counties and saying, well, what's your approach? What's working for you with this sort of deficit?
We absolutely are. And what I will say is, coming out over and over and over again, is that other counties didn't do what we did from 09 to 19. And so they have the 375 instructional positions that we cut, the 3 schools that we closed, all of those things they still have, and they can take those resources and reorganize as a school system and attack Blueprint that way. We, as Mr. Whistler said earlier, we have no fat. We have no low-hanging fruit to go to at this point. And that's why we're talking about things like outdoor school and other positions on the 12th that are very valuable to our school system. And so when I talk, and I spend lots of time with the other superintendents, the cuts that they're going to make to balance their budget are the cuts that we made in that 10 years, from 9 to 19. We've already gone through all the options that are in front of them right now. That's the big difference for us.
I'm wondering whether, similar to the dual enrollment, where you have 4 classes that CCPS will pay for per year, if we could also do that with AP exams. Is that something that we could?
Yes. The CCR standard will be a requirement for CCPS to cover the cost of AP exams. However, the scale of the cost for an AP course compared to a dual enrollment course, very different, there.
Okay. I think it's 8:15 and 2 hours late tomorrow, everybody.
Yes. And as we said, we will go ahead and research some of the thinking and ideas we came up with this evening, and have that information for us on the 12th. And although it's a heavy conversation, we look forward to continuing the conversation and the collaboration. So
Yeah, I just thank the staff,
Dr. McCabe, yourself, the staff at this table, all of the members in the back, all of our administrators and educators. This isn't done in a vacuum, and I am just monumentally impressed at the level of effort you put into this, the stones that you have turned over, and but again, I know we can work together and make this happen.
I think we also need to remind the community too, this isn't just something that was done overnight, and this has been ongoing since COVID, when Kerwin was having their ongoing discussions in their development. And the problem that a lot of the school systems were seeing is because they kept changing things. And once they pass law, even things are still changing. So it has become very difficult for many school systems to figure out how they're going to handle anything. And
I know
please,
it's been painful for everyone, so
Yes.
thank you all so much for
Right.
pulling it together for us.
and please,
we'll
and I,
continue the discussion.
yeah, and I hope the community understands, you know, we all have a lot of invested interest in, and a lot of pride in our county and the traditions that we have, whether it's experiences we have had individually here growing up, things that are once moved here, our children have experienced, and things, you know, the families have gone through, and, you know, just getting here. None of this is ever easy. None of it. All right, so our next meeting is on February 12th at 4 p.m. here in the boardroom. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.